instances of paranormal phenomena have been reported in this desolate place. Events that may reflect the area's tragic past.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Other Dangers Podcast, where we talk all things paranormal. I'm Ken James, and this is Jason McKittrick.
Hey, folks.
Now, if it can haunt, howl, or dwell in the dark, we want to talk about it. This week, we're exploring the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. And now, here's Jay with a brief intro on the case.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I mean, this is the big one. This is the big UFO case, and our first UFO case that we've covered. This is the first recorded UFO abduction case, all the way back from 1961, Betty and Barney Hill. We'll leave the good stuff to, as we're going through all the material. But this is one of the most compelling ones ever recorded. So I figured, well, we both figured that this would be the best one to start with to finally give you folks an ET episode.
Yeah, and as you try to wade through the bullshit, this one, is the one that stood out. But as per usual, before we go on to Betty and Barney Hill's abduction, I'm going to pass it back over to Jay for this week's jump scare.
Okay, this week's jump scare comes to us from Abby from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Scranton?
Abby says, my neighbor Diane and I had a playful poltergeist for years, and we called it Billy. I'd come home and find something put in a weird place. Milk in a cupboard, toilet paper in the fridge, laundry detergent in the bathtub. Diane once called to ask if Billy had been around because she couldn't find a gallon of milk. We finally found it outside on the back steps. And sugar. Every morning my sugar bowl was empty. When I've had enough, I'd point to Diane's home and yell, "Go see Diane." And within 5 minutes, I'd get a call from her and she'd say, "Thanks a lot," because he'd gone and pulled shenanigans at her place. This occurred for the entire 2 years we lived there. No one believed us, not even our husbands. My mother thought someone was stealing from us when we were sleeping or out of my house. My sister believed something was going on, but didn't know what. I still can't explain any of it.
The trickery.
It's trickery. I mean, and, to call on a fan favorite, I don't know if it's a fan favorite. It's a my favorite. Maybe that's, is this like Sausage Swiper's American cousin? Like Sugar Swiper?
Or milk grabber, milk hider.
Milker. I don't know.
I liked it. I enjoyed it. It is a fan favorite because, we're our biggest fans.
Yeah. Thank you, Abby.
All right. So, Abby, thank you. And on to tonight's topic, the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill.
The abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Yeah. Like all great paranormal topics, the first place I heard about this was on Unsolved Mysteries. Mm-hmm. And I think the big thing about this case, which if you know anything about the case, or if you don't, you've probably heard the chilling, hypnotic, the interview tapes that were taken from when Betty and Barney were both hypnotized. And they are truly chilling.
Absolutely. I actually made a social media post about it before gearing up for this because I too was, I was vaguely familiar and I knew of it. I didn't know their names like as well as you do. And then when you were like, how about the Betty and Barney Hill case? Let's talk about that. I was like, oh, that's the one with the couple with the hypnosis tapes.
Yep.
And I remember seeing it. I was in my grandparents' living room and just one of the shows were on. That were always on, and I remember seeing video of the hypnosis tapes and the pictures, even the fucking pictures, like this, like the Polaroids or whatever you want to call them. Even they're just scary, man.
Yeah, I mean, Polaroids are. Those may have been part of like the production or whatever, but their whole the entirety of their evidence is literally just these interview tapes from them being hypnotized. Because what made it so compelling was the fact that this, well-known and well-respected psychologists said, "No, this is real. I mean, you can hear the fear in their voices." And you'll hear, folks, as we go throughout this episode, we're going to intersperse some audio from some of these
these recordings. Yeah,
some of these recordings, and they're something else. If you haven't heard them before, buckle up.
Yeah. Well, and by Polaroids, I meant like maybe they weren't Polaroids. It was just pictures of them during the hypnosis, of them like sitting there and like, you know, they're worn and they have that like vibe of like when we were growing up, like pictures of our you know, like how even those pictures had like creepiness to them just because of, I guess, the stock of the film and
the graininess.
Yeah, the graininess and the wear and tear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So the Betty and Barney Hill incident, also known as the Hill abduction, and then later on also known as the Zeta Reticuli incident, which is actually one of the more compelling components of the case.
Yeah.
Occurred in September of 1961, and the Hills from the beginning claimed that they had both been abducted by extraterrestrials. Now, this was not anything that, you know, had been around before. There was no Project Blue Book yet. There was no people out there claiming to be abducted before. Like, they literally created, like, you know, the mold for how other people would, you know, come forward with their abductions, right? So they stated that they'd been kidnapped by these aliens who said they came from the like we said, the Zeta Reticuli system. Their story was later adapted into this best-selling book called The Interrupted Journey. And if you want to see a very cool, very awesome and very vintage production of this, you actually can find it on YouTube, starring James Earl Jones himself as Barney. It's actually not bad. It's part of the I think it's called the Dark Skies series. It was like a series that was on TV back in the 70s, 1975. It's called the UFO incident. Check it out. It's on YouTube, like everything else is these days. It's a nice little dramatization of their story.
Well, like them telling the story originally, like, so you can read, you know, you can go, you know, Google it, and you could, you know, wiki it, and you could just read like, all right, here are the details laid out of how it occurred. They were they were on a road trip from where was it? Through New Hampshire.
They were coming back from Montreal, and they were, you know, on this. From what I found, it was a belated honeymoon because they were both so busy. These were professional, very well respected people. Yeah. Barney was a postman, and Betty was a social worker, and they were both active in the civil rights movement. If I guess I should have mentioned earlier, this was an interracial couple in the early '60s. So this was, you know, a very progressive couple here. So they. A point that I came across many times was that this isn't a couple that really would want to have been bringing any more attention to themselves, right? So this was one of the credibility, the things that folks bring into to, you know, kind of like, you know, certify their credibility is like, well, why would they want to make anything like this up?
And so, that's a huge part of it too, because like, dude, that's the last thing you need at that point. You're already being berated probably by, you know, you leave your small section of town, you know, you're already getting so much in the tapes. He brings it up at points that it's like, it's chilling. It really is. And the way he addresses it and the way he talks at points, it's just, I was sitting here alone. My wife was at work. I'm like preparing for this just to, like, you know, freshen up, get, you know, the chill vibes going. And God damn it, if I didn't freak myself the fuck out. Just me and my dogs, and I'm like, you know, I'm looking at them like, yo, if something happens, you guys are stepping up, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so they were on their way back from Montreal and back to their home in New Hampshire. And they're not too far from home when they view this weird light in the sky, which they thought was the moon at first. And then afterwards, Betty's looking at it and she's like, "Oh, I think I discovered a new star. I've never seen that one before," because she was actually very well versed in astronomy. And all of a sudden, the light moves up abruptly. So she's like, "Oh, what is that?" So, interestingly enough, her sister had like a strange encounter years earlier, where she said that she had encountered a UFO. So Betty was like, "Oh, maybe I'm getting to see one now." You know, so she tells Barney, "Oh, check it out. Pull over." So he gets out. They stop the car. He gets out and he pulls out his binoculars. and he actually gets to see it fly across the moon. And he has his binoculars and he's looking, and he says, "No, that looks like, that's a passenger plane. Like, I don't think that's a UFO." And then it started moving erratically, not in like a straight line like an airliner would. And they see that it was an odd shaped, which is all that they would call it, and had these very strange lights on it. So they kind of just like, well, I guess that's what that is. And then they get back in the car and they continue on their journey. Apparently at some point, because their memory is somewhat hazy onto what happened, the craft, the UFO, the saucer, as they called it, whatever you want to call it, moved over their car, and they remember these weird buzzing sounds and these weird tap noises, and then it felt like something touched the back of their car. They could almost like feel it. And after that, they kind of they started to have this weird out-of-body experience, they said. It was almost like they were in this state of altered consciousness, is how they described it.
Yeah, now, but from what I was reading too, and from what I saw and what I remember, at first there was like a missing time period. Like there was just...
Well, yeah, there is a missing time period after this part that I'm saying. Okay. Yeah, they and as they're close to this the craft as it's flying over, they can actually Barney says he can see into the windows, and he can see 8 to 11 humanoid figures. He can't really see exactly what they are, but they look human-ish.
That's the best description as you can get.
Right. And then after that, they hear the series of like rhythmic beeping and buzzing sounds, and then something bounced off the back of their vehicle. The car starts vibrating, and a tingling sensation passed through their bodies. And then this is when they said that, like I said, they experienced this onset of an altered state of consciousness, and their minds were like dulled. Mm-hmm. So they get hit with a second series of these weird buzzing sounds, and then they come back to full consciousness. And as they come back to this state of full consciousness, they realize that they had traveled 35 miles, but had this weird spotty memory of what had happened. So all they can remember at that point was that somewhere in those 35 miles, they made a sudden unplanned turn, and then they encountered like a roadblock and observing a fiery orb in the road. So that's all they remember.
Yeah. And just that on its own, like, we've all had those moments where we're driving and like, you're like, wait, what the fuck? Like, you're like, you're zoned out and you're like, like a mile's gone, because you were just, in your own head and just driving and
you're
on
just
autopilot,
Yeah. You're in fucking bat country and you're just like, oh, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can definitely all relate to that feeling, especially, they're driving through the night. They were expecting to come home at about 3 a.m. They left hours earlier. They were driving the night through. Barney apparently, though, was used to this because he worked the night shift at the post office. Mm-hmm. But, they said, this is how they felt. So they get home at around dawn, and they both said that they had these weird sensations and impulses that they really couldn't explain. So what does that mean?
Like he kept wanting to examine his crotch.
Right.
Yeah.
And Betty was insisting that their luggage needed to be kept towards the back door.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah. And the watches that both of them had been wearing never worked again. Very strange.
Very strange.
Barney found that the leather strap for the binoculars that he was wearing, that he used to look at the airplane, was broken and torn, and he couldn't recall that. Mm-hmm. And the toes of his best dress shoes were scuffed up, something he would not have allowed. Yeah,
especially back then too, because you had to go through a whole ordeal of getting your shoes fixed or getting new ones, and that's even way too expensive for back then.
Right. Apparently, right after that, then they both took 2 very long showers to remove any possible contamination or whatever, and then they drew pictures of what they had observed, and this is where they drew their famous pictures of what the craft looked like.
Betty's dress too. She had that.
I'm about to get to that. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's fine, buddy. I mean, do you want to tell them about the dress? Go ahead.
Well, apparently her dress had this pink powdery substance on it that she started to clean off, and then eventually she realized that it was beyond repair, so she threw it out, and then something in her was like, no, I'm gonna keep this and grab it. Mm-hmm. Which is still in the New Hampshire Museum of
Yeah, it's a local university, and they have the original tapes and a few of the other items from associated with the case. But yeah, there were. I didn't get an exact time, but they said over the years there were 5 laboratories that had conducted chemical and forensic analysis on the dress, and never really there's some strange things on it, but they couldn't definitively pin down what that pink powder may have been on her dress. So then also they noticed that there were shiny concentric circles on the car's trunk that had not been there the previous day. They they brought over a compass to the rings, and when they got close to it, it would spin. So somehow the back of their car had become magnetized. So, and they'd shown this to other people. Apparently, it was verified, and it's like, okay, well, is that the spot where this craft had attached itself to their car when it lifted it up?
Yeah,
I mean, your mind fucking swirls.
It has to. I mean, because like that's one of the best things about these kind of stories is like. There's all these different things, like all the different details that we're going through. And then you kind of start piecing stuff together of like, what could this have been? What could that have been? And then like the pink powder on her dress, like that could have been removed during, in some of the tapes where he was like, I don't want to be operated on. And she was talking about, the fucking, inner navel, the syringe.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so what, they've removed her dress and like, what was that? Like some kind of delousing, some space delousing powder? Like,
who knows, man? That could have been like pink dust. I mean, that could be like, they could have been using some like high speed, like alien drills, and that's like dust from her skull that they, you know what I mean? I don't know what it is.
I thought you were going to go with like space Coke or something, like something
space
simple.
Coke. I mean,
shout out to Cheech and Chong on that one.
I'll shout out to aliens bringing people space Coke. I mean, if that's all they were doing, I mean, I think people would be a little more, receptive to their visits.
They'd be happier to party, and like, shove that shit in my navel. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe that's just how they get down, and like, once humans have some space Coke, that's it.
Yeah,
they don't remember anything.
You're fucking done, man.
Literally,
the normal stuff ain't cutting it no more.
Yeah. Yep. So in the next coming, within the next week, Betty and Barney discuss between themselves, and they decide to, try to. They want to give their report. They want to tell somebody what happened because clearly something happened. They these memories of what apparently happened to them were not. They didn't know them yet because they didn't have the research. They didn't have the regressive therapy. So they go to they telephone the local Air Force base to report the encounter, and she withheld some details. She just wanted to say that we had this weird encounter. Maybe they could corroborate it with some kind of like, there was something in the air that night, and maybe they're just acting weird. But they were kind of like brushed off, and they said that you probably just misidentified the planet Jupiter. Fuckers.
Yeah. They're like, all right,
it was swamp gas, right?
Yeah. They're like, look, it was probably Jupiter. You know what Jupiter looks like. Come on, they're like, it's the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. So within the next few days and weeks, they decide to contact this retired Marine Corps major who had written this book on UFOs, and they figured, well, this guy will probably help us because this is his topic. So they write to him and they tell him the full details. And Betty writes to this Marine Corps major who is a member of NICAP, which, what does that stand for again, Ken?
That is the National Investigations Committee of Aerial Phenomena.
Right, which was just a civilian UFO research group. But Betty writes to this Major Kehoe and tells him, their entire story in detail. And he passes the letter along to this gentleman named Walter Webb, who is this Boston astronomer and a fellow NICAP member. And they get together and they have a 6-hour interview where they just completely just pour out their whole story. Yeah. Tell them everything that they can remember. And then Barney, this is the first time that he says that he developed this mental block where he was like, there's there's something that happened to us that like I don't want to remember.
Oh, God.
And so he described in detail that he could remember about the craft and the appearance of that they were somewhat not human figures on the craft, and that it just didn't feel right. Like they there was something blocking there. So Walter Webb suggested that they look into hypnosis regression. So before they get to that, as the story unfolds, Betty starts having these insane dreams.
Oh, God.
Where it's almost like, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it kind of like telegraphs what we think happened to them, but it's almost like her memories are surfacing in her dreams. So she has this like quasi version of what happened, where, you know, she goes into an exam room. There's all these weird people that kind of look human. They're examining parts of her. There's a dull knife involved.
Isn't there like her like getting guided through the woods too? Like
her getting guided through the woods, and then her hair getting cut off in pieces. They examine her eyes. So some strange things. And then there's this guy, you know, there's these examiners, and there's a guy that she refers to as the leader. Yeah. So, yeah.
And like even in her interviews in her later life, man, like like she's old, man. Like she's fucking up there, and she's still telling him, like, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not even like old codgery like you'd expect. You know?
She's still on point.
Yeah. And that's the kind of stuff that, like, you know, once again, like I always love to bring it back to like what we can relate to, like what we have in our family. That's a big thing of why me and you are into this kind of stuff. It's like that feeling of like, yo, this person told me like this story. And, like, can you tell it, you know, when you go meet with friends and people that are interested in it, and like her, even at that age, like still knowing it, still being fresh. And like at the point where it's not like nonchalant. It's more like, no, this is what fucking happened.
Yeah. And the fact that the details never changed over time is always a good indicator that, you know, at least they believe what happened.
Yeah, they have something locked in their head of this is how it went.
Right. So fast forward a bit, because they're dealing with this. They're out with their story. They're gaining some notoriety, which is not what they're trying to do. They're really just trying to get an answer to what happened. And so we fast forward a bit up to 1964 when the Hills meet with Benjamin Simon, who's this hypnotism expert. I guess that's what they're calling him. Yeah. But he's he was skilled in this, apparently. So
was he ex-military too?
I don't think so, because from what I see, he was some say he's a psychiatrist. Then there's another guy involved who's this captain in the Air Force. So it's a little bit muddy because there's no links on this guy, Benjamin Simon. And I've been trying to find more stuff on him, because he's the guy that does it. The original ones, the ones that we're going to put some clips in here. So this is where it first starts. So, I mean, it's not like he's just some like clown out off the streets. This is something that this guy had done. So he was referred to the Hills by these two other gentlemen. Both of them, were, you know, had military backgrounds. So, you know, they go to him, and then all hell breaks loose. They go and they get hypnotized, and this insane story just comes out of Barney. Like,
fuck, dude.
It's, I mean, it's, if you know your classic extraterrestrial abduction, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But he lays it out in detail, that, you know, they're basically what they remember is what they remember, but then they're brought aboard this craft, and they're examined like human guinea pigs. Here, Barney reports that they were taken into this disc-shaped craft where they were separated. He was escorted to a room by 3 of the men and told to lie on a small rectangular exam table. Unlike Betty, Barney's narrative of the exam was less detailed, as he continued to keep his eyes closed for most of the exam. At some point, this cup-like device is placed over his genitals. And he believes that a sperm sample was taken. And then the men scraped his skin and peered into his ears and mouth. And then a thin tube was inserted into him and quickly removed. And then he thought that they were doing something strange to his spine, almost like they were counting his vertebrae.
For me, that's because I had spinal surgery and like all the stuff like leading up to that.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, it's like there's so many levels of this, and
yeah, no. So later on, Betty reports a conversation with this one of them called the leader that she understood in English, but Barney said that he heard them speaking in this like mumbling language that he couldn't understand, but then he also understood them in English. So
yeah, like and sometimes he would like look in their face and like the leader's face, and like it was just communicating with a look.
Right. And you'll hear in some of these, and there was something about, because he freaks out, and we'll have this clip for you. He keeps going back to the eyes. He's like, there's the eyes again, the eyes. And it's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And he is freaking out because he like the therapist or whatever this gentleman was like calms him down. He's like, no, it's okay. He's like, tell me some more. And then like, he just starts getting ramped up. And it's insane. So he recalled being escorted from the ship and taken to his car afterwards in a daze, and he watched the ship leave. He remembered a light appearing on the road, and then he said, "Oh no, not again," which is strange. So that could suggest that this had happened before to them, and this is the only one that they're remembering.
Yeah,
they didn't really, So it's strange for him, and then a little less detailed than Betty's, because Betty under hypnosis was similar to the events from her dreams that we suggested before about the UFO abduction. But there were some notable differences. She said that the technology of the craft was different in some kind of strange way than what Barney had said. And that there were different, significant differences in her physical description of these short men that were on the craft. So, Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when you listen to her tapes, she goes through a lot of like, she is freaking out because the big thing that she kind of like settles on is they stick this large syringe through her navel, and they're telling her like, oh no, it's not gonna hurt, don't worry, and they do it to her, and she's freaking out. She's like, no, it hurts, and they stop, and it's over, and she's like, why did you do that to me? And he's like, oh, it was a pregnancy test.
Yeah, and while that's happening, while she's having all that pain, the leader puts his hand over her eyes, and the pain goes away.
Right.
And what like well, here's the thing too about their two difference their hypnosis tapes. Like even during it, like you could tell Barney is still being resistant. There's still things that he doesn't want to talk about.
Right.
And like as soon as they start to kind of slip, that's when he loses his fucking mind. Like that's when like, and it happens with like 3 or 4 times in his interview. Yeah. And like, you hear the times where he's like, I don't want to say. And like the guy's like, no, you can. And then as he starts going, it starts like, and then they bring him back down, and it's like, fuck, man.
Because it's almost, it's not even almost like it's his mind can't handle this. Yeah. So he has a mental block. They didn't do it. His own mind did it. Like he can't handle that shit. So like when they're trying to regress him back to this during the hypnosis, like when he realizes what's going on, he just like his brain cannot fucking handle it.
When he's talking about, I need my gun, he's freaking out about it, needing his gun.
Yeah. Betty and Barney Hill story is very interesting, but there's no real evidence other than their testimony. Is that correct?
Well, it's their credibility. Why would they want to bring this into their lives? And if you hear the tapes of Ben Simon's interviews with them under hypnosis, the screaming and he was just so frightened.
I got to get my gun. All right. That's all.
Dude, like that, I was like, where's my wife? Like, I was like, I'm here at my apartment by myself, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, because I haven't I haven't listened to these since I was like an early teenager. And not, and now, I'm a man living out on my own, that I'm listening to him by myself, and I haven't listened to him in years. And it's just like like, you know,
I mean, it's compelling, man. I mean, because both of them are, you listen to it, it's like, how can this, if this is fake, I mean, it's so genuine that you listen to it and you're just like, well, how could this be?
That's what I was saying at the beginning of this. Like, you wade through so much bullshit with this kind of stuff. Yeah. And like this, like they've done this with so many people after, because like, well, it worked for the Betty and Barney Hill case.
Right.
And then the people that do it emulate this, and it never sounds like tape sound, man. And it's like, because
feeling. Yeah. I mean, because if you, you know, just to digress a little bit, if you look at all the UFO cases, even let's just say just some of the prominent ones, the ones that really rise to the top are this and Travis Walton, the Fire in the Sky story. Because the rest of them, for the most part, there's also the Allagash incident, which is like, holy shit, we'll have to get to that one. It's the bunch of art students that were up at like a camping trip and they get taken out of their canoe. And then and the best part of it is that they're all artists, so they all have these like, you know, artistic representations of what happened to them. Yeah. You know, to scare me out of my mind when I'm 9 years old watching fucking
sightings and unsolved mysteries.
If you haven't noticed the trend here, folks, it's me and Ken being scared out of our minds when we were kids. This is our own therapy, just talking about it years later.
And you know what? It's not going away too, because like I'm here reliving this by myself, and I'm like, you know.
Next time, just use the Bane voice and just yell at it, and you'll be fine.
I'm a big brave bear. I'm a big brave bear.
So just back to Betty's session for which is another even more significant piece of evidence, is the star map.
Oh my God! Yeah.
So during her regression, Betty, after she gets regressed, she draws this star map. Okay. And she doesn't know what she's drawing. She's saying that she saw this on the ship. And it's hard to kind of relay this, you know, over audio without seeing it. But she basically draws what if you were looking at a holographic, like 3-dimensional image of stars in 3 dimensions, right? With some being larger that are closer to you and the ones being smaller that are farther away. It has this almost hologram look to it. But she didn't know she was drawing that at the time, because in the 60s, she would not have seen one of those.
Yeah.
So she draws this and says, this is what I saw on the ship. She thinks it has something to do with where they're from or where they're going. And maybe this has to do with, she thought it had something to do with like trade routes or something.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few years, and she brings this to a few astronomers, and they basically there was one specific one in 1968. Her name was Marjorie Fish. She was just an elementary school teacher, but also an amateur astronomer. And she was intrigued by this whole idea of the star map. And she starts looking at it, and she says, wait a minute, if I turn this way and I enlarge the size for distance, it exactly lays over the Zeta Reticuli system. Now, the funny thing about this is, in 1961, when this happened, we didn't have the information to draw this map.
Oh, God.
So how did she have this ability to draw this map where it lines up exactly on a star map that we didn't even have the ability to see yet?
And like, that wasn't even like a concept, really. You know what I mean? Like that whole idea, like, she's not just coming up with this, like random dots that match up, completely symmetrical. It's like either, and the guy says this is either like precognitive, like she is a psychic. He's like, I don't know if you know, one of the guys that I was watching, who's one of the investigators, one of the documentaries. He's like, I don't know if you know what that is. He's like, either she's like, you know, has like precognitive abilities, where she can predict that we're going to discover this stuff, or she fucking saw it somewhere and it burned into her head.
Right.
That she could draw it again.
I asked him what he's going to do with it. And he said, just a simple simple tripping. And I asked him what. And he said he just wants to put it in my table. It's just a simple test. And I don't know, it will hurt. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he said, no, it won't hurt. And he takes a needle into my table and spit it. And I'm crying, and I tell her it's hurting, take it out. I don't know why they put that lucky split my navel. I tried to tell them they shouldn't do it.
Did they make any sexual advances to you?
No.
They didn't.
Nope. I asked the leader, I said, why did they stick the needle in my navel? And he said it was a pregnancy test. And I said, well, I don't know what they expected, but that was no pregnancy test here.
People called last night and asked about the stars that she identified in the early 60s and that none of the astronomers or scientists knew about until recently. Can you tell us that story?
In her abduction, let's put it that way, the leader, and she got quite friendly, and he told her to answer her questioning about where they were and where they came from. And he said, well, he would tell her where they came from if she would tell him where she came from. And so he pulled down a map, which had a bunch of stars in it, and showed it to her. I asked her later to draw me that map. And what she drew was a map with a number of stars in it and a lot of lines, dotted lines and hard lines, one of which she said represented trade routes between the stars in the universe, and the other one represented, trade routes or expeditions. Well, she claims that one of those stars that she put on there has just recently been discovered. If that is true, of course, and if her map is valid, then the only thing she can claim is that she has precognition. I don't know how many are willing to accept that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, someone as notable as Carl Sagan looked at it and said, this is just random dots on a paper. Yeah. But I could see why he would do that, being in the position that he's in. If he starts saying that this is an alien star map and has no answers beyond that, there's just no credibility. So I kind of understand where that stuff kind of goes when you show this kind of stuff to very prominent people. But you can't. There's something undeniable about that, right? I mean, even just the whole holographic component to it, yeah, we can view it because we've seen like there's Tony Stark's heads-up display, and there's the Avengers, the way that they show shit. Like we can easily grasp that concept because we've seen it on screen.
We've seen Minority Report; they're pulling things from holograms that now exist now that you can do in surveillance systems. But
don't you dare mention Tom Cruise on this fucking podcast.
Look, I watched Rain Man last night. It's a good movie. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll let that one go.
Yeah.
I like him in Interview with the Vampire.
And War of the Worlds and Last Samurai. Sorry. I'll end it there.
It's not bad. Yeah. Okay, it's fine. Anyway.
Tom Cruise podcast with Jay and Ken.
Tom Cruise podcast. We'll yell at you like a motherfucker for the next half hour for not wearing your mask or whatever the fuck this guy's doing.
Did we mention Scientology?
Let's not.
Yeah. But hold on. Well, when you were saying with Carl Sagan, people like that, see, there's a stance in the scientific community, especially with those kind of guys, where it's and you said it, but if this kind of stuff comes up, it has to be their position that this is random nonsense because it isn't, overly analyzed. It isn't something that's
Well, yeah, because he's an authority. So if he comes out and says, yeah, I think this is real, they want more info. And then he stands there and says, well, I don't have any more info. And then he just looks like a jerk off. So he has to have that position. I understand that.
Yeah, that's all I was getting at for the listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive to me. I mean, you take those hypnosis interviews, regression therapy sessions, then this star map, which honestly, the star map seems to be it's just amazing to me. And you have literally what is still referred to as the most convincing UFO abduction story. The first one is still the most convincing one.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we were saying. They all get emulated after that, and everyone tries to copy the same kind of, I was hypnotized and this comes out and blah, 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 and it's all right, fuck you, fake. That's kind of where you go. And then one of the weirdest things is what they found the Zeta Reticuli, the star systems are it's 1 and 2, and the stars are so close to each other that the communication with so many what's the word I'm looking for? Not accusation, but so many different ideas come to play about how old the star system is. If there is life there and how old they are, they would be light years beyond our technology and our abilities. So, and the communication that can happen between these two, I think stars or star systems, it's just like, it brings a whole different set of implications that you're like, your mind races about, and you want to go into.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's also when anyone decides to like research this kind of stuff, when they say that this kind of stuff you start thinking about is mind expanding, that's why, because you start thinking about, oh, Jesus, like, does this mean that this, and how could this mean this and that? Oh, sorry, I saw some smooches.
Yeah. We smooch over here. Smooches happen.
Yeah, we smooch over here too.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. It's staying in. I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is mind expanding, because when you think about this kind of stuff, it's like, all right, so these aliens came to New Hampshire
of all places,
in 1961 and picked up these people to examine them and do whatever they did to them. Also happened to have this star map that we wouldn't even be able to conceptualize at that point. And this woman, essentially just, a regular, honest person has this information in their skull.
I remember the one time I came up to visit you, and we were at what was the place we used to go to all the time?
Tiffany's.
I remember there. I mean, we were at the bar, we ate, and then we start talking about this kind of stuff. And you were saying mind expanding stuff. And we start talking about, star systems and distance and all this kind of stuff. And I remember having a slight panic attack. And this is before I started having panic attacks. And I had to back up and do some things to get rid of them. And I remember I was like, I got to go outside for a bit. And I remember we were talking about literally this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you start to understand a little bits of it and then start to think about them, it can really trigger some stuff in your head that you're just like, I wasn't ready for it.
Sure. I mean, and I'll reference the individual again, because, so much of my life is devoted to the man's creations, but that's truly at the heart of when someone says something's Lovecraftian, when you realize your place in the universe, and it's like, oh my God, traveling at the speed of light, you'd never make it to the other side, wherever that is, and whatever side means, it's like, and there's these entities out there that come to our planet, maybe, and they have the ability to travel these.
Bruce, go. I'm sorry. Travel these. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry again.
There's these.
Okay. There's these life forms that, apparently exist that can travel these immense distances of time and space and pick up a car in New Hampshire
and magnetize the trunk
and leave, some kind of curious pink powder on some lady's dress. But then again, they wake up and it's, they have these unbelievable, experiences, and it's like, what is happening here?
The thing about him, after when they got, back to their house and their little ticks they adapted, him with the having to inspect his genitals, that kind of stuff, you kind of understand.
Yeah, I mean, now you do.
Yeah, but the luggage by the back door thing, it's like, all right, do you need to boogaloo out of here? Do you need to get the fuck? You know what I mean? What?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you just look at it, it's like that just seems to me like she had a deep ingrained feeling of not feeling safe anymore. So here's our shit. It's by the door. If we got to get out of here, let's fucking. They had their their go bags. It's like it's compelling. I mean, this story is very compelling, and coupled with the all the audio that they have of the two of them, it's they've even erected a plate in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources marked the site of the alleged craft's first approach with a historical marker, and this is in July of 2011. So you can go there and see it today, and it's does that add to its validity because they did that? Maybe. but it also kind of shows you that how much impact this case had on UFO, for lack of a better term, culture. They, you know,
like
they just
those kind of like, you know, landmarks or the historical markings. It's like, okay, this in Philly, it's like, this is where American Bandstand was. Like,
right.
This is where, you know, Ben Franklin did the, you know, discovered electricity, like that kind of stuff. Like, this is where Betty Hill and Barney Hill were, you know, originally abducted. Like, just that on its own, that you know, like you're saying, it was that heavy of a case, or that, you know, and the lack there of evidence of like the lack of physical evidence, it almost doesn't matter at this point.
Right.
It's chilling. It really is. Like when you,
you're right. It doesn't. It's so embedded in the you know, the cultural subconscious that it provided the framework for every other UFO abduction case that was to come after it. And it's, you know, the first one, the OG, is still the best. Yeah. It's, you know,
and the thing that the thing that sucks is like there could be plenty that would be very credible. But like everyone emulating the same, you know, kind of like.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, your experience of of this kind of stuff, if it were true, it's corrupt, right? Because you have all these other people's experiences in your mind, right? Yeah. So if you try to delve into someone's unconscious, this stuff is going to bubble up, you know. So and I've seen plenty of things about regression hypnotherapy, where it's like, you bring someone in, like that almost plants a seed in their mind, like that, like you could almost like lead them on, even if you're not even trying to, where like this kind of stuff will bubble up. So
and sometimes people can run with that, you know. And that's the thing that's so frustrating. It's like, with when we go into, you know, ghost stories and stuff, that like, you know, 99% of the stuff that you can just go, fuck you, you know, like this is,
except for everything that Zach Bagans says, all true.
Oh man, I went to bed watching Ghost Adventures last night, man. Love him. I'm he's a douche, whatever, I don't care. Fucking love him.
It's my guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Did you watch the Comedy Store one yet?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that's the newest one. I haven't watched it yet. I feel like I want to do an episode on it, and I haven't even watched it yet.
All right, well, we'll make that for February. That'll be one of our February episodes.
Hey, the Comedy Store, one of the most famously haunted locations in the United States.
Hell yeah.
Sam Kinison apparently saw, you know, would like converse with the spirits during some of his sets, like they would fuck with him. Some heavy shit.
Sounds like we got an episode for February. But yeah, no, I just back to, you know, the abduction things, like you were saying, Travis Walton, yes, fire in the sky, and there's a lot of things around that too, where, you know, lie detector tests, things like that, like some of them, he went kind of too far, you know, with his book. He was just trying to grandiose, like make things, you know, bigger than they were, points and
yeah, maybe because the movie is way more overblown than the book is. The book is actually not, I mean, I say not that crazy, but it's not as out there as the movie is. If there's anyone that really tried to make it grandiose, it's the Whitley Strieber book, The Communion. Okay. That's insanity. And
if you've, what I meant by the Travis Walton is like there was points where like he said he like piloted the ship.
Like, look, I mean, we all want to pilot that ship.
Fuck yeah, you know. But like him saying like there was a point where I was in this chair and it's like, all right, man, relax. Like, hold on,
pull it back in a little bit.
Yeah, I was with you, and now it's like, oh, you're flying. You know, what are you, fucking Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum? Chill.
Right. All 6 Infinity Stones? No, you get one in the story. But speaking of books, they went on to publish in 1966 their now famous book called Interrupted Journey with John Fuller, and it details, you know, their entire you know, experience, and then, you know, how they went on to, you know, deal with it in their later life. It's a classic. You can, you know, most folks who are into this stuff own it, and it's a piece of this UFO culture, like I said before, for lack of a better term. It's you know, it's part of the canon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it part of the Other Dangerous podcast canon, the ODP canon?
Well, we're doing an episode. It fucking better be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Just making sure, because you know, there's some things in our episodes that we don't canonize.
No, it's true. Injured Cole did not make the cut.
Did not. We thought he would.
We thought he would. This exactly out. There's plenty of, speaking of, we get to the parts where people want to refute stuff. There's lots of folks who have their own idea on what happened here. Mm-hmm. And it runs the gamut from, this, Barney was, he heard, Betty's dreams and he turned it into this psychological nightmare. It's like, does that happen? I mean, if it does, okay. Or that it was complete fabrication.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I find that hard to believe for the, the reasons that we suggested in the beginning that, why would they want to bring more attention to themselves specifically during that time period? And then there's others that, they were saying that, they were influenced by this episode of The Outer Limits that had aired a few nights before that had this alien looking creature. It's like, look, there was a lot of sci-fi shit that was going on during this period of time, but like, how does that turn into I was, violently removed from my car, and then they have these horrific memories.
Like, bottom line, I've listened to so much audio recording in my fucking life, especially with anything paranormal. I love cop shows. First 48's my shit. I watch, interviews. Look, bottom line, that him freaking out in those clips, that's in my opinion, that's legit. That's legit terror, and I believe him. That's just where I sit. I'm gonna go full Fox Mulder and say I want to believe them. I do. Like I believe something happened to them. Can you take these two pieces of evidence and say, oh, aliens are definitely real? No, you can't. Yeah. But I do. Like I don't say that they're not lying. I'll just put it that way. Something happened to them. Yeah. And that's the glory of us not being, accredited scientists or investigators in this scientific realm. We get to actually just go, hey, this is my opinion, and this is how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, it's one of the big credible ones. I mean, one of my personal heroes in life, even though he's out of his mind, Mr. Dan Aykroyd. He sings its praises. I mean, amongst many other things, but he spoke pretty eloquently about it on
Rogan.
On Rogan, yeah, that's his thing.
And that was one of the only ones. That was one of the only ones that Rogan wasn't like, because all the other ones he was like, come on, that was
because Aykroyd's up there talking about like UFOs melting through buildings and shit. It's like, you can't, it just becomes white noise after a while. But that one is, this story is still well respected.
The blueprint for abduction.
It's the gold standard.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's it. I mean, just like many other things that we've covered on here, we're never trying to bring you a definitive answer. We're just presenting the case as it is, and this is what it is. This is all we got. Both have passed away at this point. I mean, Barney passed away way back in the 90s, I want to say.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Barney didn't live too much longer after. He died in 1969, and Betty died in 2004.
Yeah, she held on, man. The thing was, I think she accepted it, like
he was only 46 when he died.
Dude, he repressed shit. Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry. Like when I was saying like he's even holding back, even there. And I'm not the biggest proponent of hypnotism, but I know it does help. A lot of people, it does help.
Yeah.
And his sessions were like, the first one was it was like 4 a.m, and I guess that was just his schedule when they were doing it.
Oh yeah, no. Barney died of cerebral hemorrhage in 1969. Wow. They really did a number on it. It's fucked up. I'm sorry.
No, it's true. Hey man, well, it could be true. I mean,
listen. Let's get down to brass tacks. They fucked with his junk. His brain exploded. Right.
Yep. he was worried about it the rest of his life.
Hey, wouldn't you be? They scuffed his shoes up. They took his gun. They ripped his
binoculars strap.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, and the one thing too was like with Betty's when she's like in hers, and of course I'll pepper in clips here, and I might even just end it with that 20-minute segment. I might just like
no, don't do that. We want folks to be able to sleep tonight.
Yeah, you're right. But like even her, like she's like, where's Barney? Like they separated them, like. And both of them, like the one was somewhere, the other was another place they didn't know. And they're coming in, like, they're like, why are Barney's teeth removable and yours aren't? Like that kind of shit. Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. No,
aggressive.
Very much aggressive. And, this is without going into, which one of this, apparently like 17 races of aliens that visit our planet was this.
Yeah.
So,
oh, man. Who knows? Fuck.
I mean, Dan Aykroyd probably would know.
He would, but he would give us like, the 174 that are in, UFON's fucking files.
Oh, yeah. MUFON. Yeah.
MUFON,
yeah. I think it should be our personal goal to get Mr. Aykroyd on this podcast.
Oh, my God. All right. Let's say this. Let's say by our 30th episode, we'll start a petition.
Okay.
Get Dan Aykroyd in here. We'll both dress up in our Ghostbusters attire.
Yeah, I think that might scare him away. No, he's cool with the fans.
Yeah,
he's cool.
He's definitely into that.
Yeah.
We could pretend we're abducting him and kidnap him. They're just like, we're aliens and get them on.
Yeah.
And he'd be into it.
If we just flash our Ghostbusters tattoos, he'd be like, okay, you guys are good.
Yeah, you guys are cool. You guys are all right in my book.
Yeah, well, we could try.
We're going to try.
We are. Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I mean, that's it, folks.
Closing statements.
Closing statements on Betty and Barney Hill. Star maps. Compelling.
My closing statement is I feel, and no offense to Betty, I feel way worse for Barney. Just listening to the tapes.
Well, I think Barney couldn't handle it as well as she could. I mean, they stuck a needle in her fucking belly button.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, mentally, because she was laying out shit, like she was scared, but she was dealing, like he was just like, when it got to those breaking points, man,
it shattered his reality. Yeah. You can tell.
And brain hemorrhage, like 40 whatever years old, 47 years old.
Yeah.
Jesus God, man. Like it's brutal.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not going to say that this didn't contribute to that. I mean, postal work I know is stressful, but I'm sorry, man. Like this.
Yeah. I mean, this happens in 61. He dies in 69. 8 years of terror, I guess.
Yeah.
I'd love to speak with someone that like worked with him. Like, was he ever the same?
Yeah.
They're like, no, he was not.
Yes. They're like, no, he didn't do postal work anymore.
No, he did not.
He had gone postal. He was.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yep.
R.I.P. though. R.I.P. Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah. The true OGs of the UFO abduction case. I'm glad they were able to bring their story forward. It's a shame that Barney wasn't able to hang on, but Betty continued to tell her story all the way up until her death in 2004, and she was still lucid about it. Their details didn't change, and
And without them, who knows who would have came forward?
Right.
And we have this whole long, history.
This storied history of aliens and their probes.
Not the cool ones, though. These weren't the cool probes.
No. We're talking about these intergalactic rapists here. That's what we're talking about. Not cool.
Yeah, not cool aliens.
Yeah, not cool, you big-eyed fucks.
What if aliens get to they pick the wrong guy, and he's like, please, like,
oh, like he's into it.
Yeah, he's like, where's that going? Tell me where that goes.
Yeah, I think that's probably happened. And then there's the ones where like they literally pick the wrong fucking guy, like Arnold on a bad day, like in his prime. He's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. And he just he rips the arm out and hits the guy in the neck like fucking Total Recall.
Exactly.
And they're just like, they're all like,
he's like, wait, what was this? And they didn't realize that he sleeps with the Conan sword.
Yeah. He cuts a hole out of the ship and just jumps down and lands with it in the ground, and it supports his fall.
Exactly. All the way down.
Dude, we're doing Arnold too much.
Is this another? Yeah, this is another Arnold reference.
Yeah, we're doing Arnold too much.
I mean, it's fine. I mean, Peter James, are you good with it?
I'm coming through.
He's fine with it.
Yeah, he's good. He's got it. Yeah.
He's the grand adjudicator of all things all things Other Dangerous podcast, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, he is the officiator of ODP's canon, and he's cool. We're good.
We are. Yep.
All right, guys. So for Other Dangerous Podcast, I'm Ken James.
And I'm Jason McKittrick.
And as always, have a spooky evening.
The purpose of doing this work is to open us more to the idea that the universe may be vastly more interesting, containing entities, energies, beings that we did not know it existed. And when we open that consciousness, the reason I call this Passport to the Cosmos is that then we open to a larger reality. We're not simply sort of earthbound in our consciousness as if we were the top intelligence in the cosmos. We've come more modestly to realize we're in connection with energies, beings, whatever it may be, that is beyond ourselves. And that would be a very healthy development for this species.
Harvard University Medical School is embracing little grey men. Little grey men from outer space who actually abduct humans.
After I'd worked with 40 or 50 of these individuals, I discovered to my amazement that there simply was no psychiatric explanation of this, that something real had happened to them.
Dr. John Mack is Professor of Psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. Professor Mack has spent the last few years listening to some people with very strange stories.
As said before, the people, when examined, are not psychiatrically disturbed. So the only thing that behaves like that is real experience.
Yeah, you say that it's trauma, it's trauma.
It's traumatic. Not, yeah. Real experiences are the only thing that occurs like that. Psychosis isn't like that. Madness is not like that. Dreams are not like that. Fantasy is not like that. Now, if these are real experiences, what is going on? What's the source of these experiences?
That's the question. What's going on?